It'll be at the top of all shows. Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then we're available on demand. And we're available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple Television, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. We're live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same models of PBS and NPR, but designed for our LGBTQ plus community. Our mission is to support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbian, trans, student youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS healthcare, business, political advocacy, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, let's welcome anchor Jeff Oliverio. Jeff is a founder and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ plus Council and My Hollywood Pride, which is scheduled to return in January of 2024. Jeff is also returning as co-chair of the upcoming 2023 National LGBTQ plus Task Force Gala in October. The task force events include Winter Party Festival, and they have given back more than $3.3 million to the LGBTQ plus community organizations in South Florida. Welcome, Jeff.
Good evening. Happy to be here. Let's welcome anchor John Hayden, a journalist for 28 years. He now works for several outlets, including South Florida Gay News, as a reporter and community editor covering politics, entertainment, and local events directly impacting the LGBTQ plus community. John's interviewed everyone from presidents to Oscar winners. He's excited for this weekend's Diversity Honors pool party and has already picked out a Barely There Speedo for the event. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much. And of course, I know that you and Al and I all went shopping for our Speedos over the weekend. I think we picked out some really cool stuff, and I can't wait to see us all together at the pool party.
Mean girls went to Target.
Now let's welcome anchor Marky G, aka Mark Gilbert, the board chair and current interim executive director of the Outshine LGBTQ plus Film Festival. He was the host of 2 major FM radio shows in South Florida, Issues Over the Rainbow on Party 93.1, and the South Beach Dance Party on Y100. Welcome back, Mark.
Well, thanks, John, and please share pictures of those Speedos with everyone. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Let's welcome anchor Gregg Shapiro, an inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. Gregg is the author of 9 books, including the forthcoming Refrain in Light, an entertainment journalist whose celebrity interviews and music reviews run in a variety of regional LGBTQ plus and mainstream publications and websites. His movies and review column called Screensaver can be found in South Florida Gay News, San Francisco Bay's Area Reporter, RottenTomatoes.com, and more. Good evening, Gregg.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be back in South Florida after a few days in New Orleans for the Saints and Sinners LGBTQ plus Literary Festival. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the Queer News for today, Tuesday, March 28th, 2023, National Weed Appreciation Day, which will surely mean something different to different people.
No, it pretty much means the same to all of us. All right, well, first let's queer up drag culture. Historic telethon Drag Isn't Dangerous is coming in May to protect LGBTQ plus rights. A dazzling roster of drag superstars is coming together for the Drag Isn't Dangerous telethon, which will raise awareness and funds for LGBTQ plus causes and organizations that support drag and trans performers, especially in areas that are under attack. Producer Entertainment Group, PEG, is spearheading this one-night-only digital event, having partnered with several LGBTQ plus companies and organizations that include GLAAD, OutTV, Trixie Cosmetics, Serve Vodka, and Five Senses Reeling, among others. Tickets for Drag Isn't Dangerous are currently being sold for $20 at moment.co/dangerous. The event will be live streamed on Sunday, May 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Trixie Mattel said in the release, quote, "The only place where men in dresses sexualize children is in church," end quote. While Bob the Drag Queen wrote, quote, "The most traumatizing thing about drag isn't harming kids, it's getting sent home first on Drag Race, but I can't relate," end quote. Jacob Slane of PEG expressed his views on the recent political environment around drag performances, saying, quote, "We are sick of it. These bans are not just about trans people or drag performers, it is a systematic subjugation of LGBTQ plus people," end quote. Through his campaign, he expects to show that drag performers are not dangerous, groomers, sexual deviants, criminals, or whatever is the latest evangelical slur. Well, it's a terrific idea, and again, it's the start of the pendulum. The event that took place in Nashville, we've talked about, that was supportive of the trans community and the drag community and the concert. The Heels March in Wilton Manors over the weekend is a start. This is another in a different vein of the different kinds of ways that we're going to galvanize in the community. I think it's very important, especially in RuPaul circles, that the RuPaul queens come out very loud and clear about what they think about what is happening in Texas, in Tennessee, and Florida, and that they should get their fan base involved, social media-wise, and corporately. We begin to take on corporate partners to stand up and say, we're not going to stand for this. And almost at the top of the pyramid is RuPaul. So I hope she's participating in PEG's event, and I congratulate them because it's really a good start in terms of the way that we begin to contextualize to the American public that this is going way, way too far. And literally, like in the old television show or the old movie Network, I've had enough. I'm mad as hell. I can't take it anymore.
Well, we have been talking on the show a lot about the lack of action. Like, why isn't the gay community, up in arms? Why isn't there stuff happening? So, as you mentioned, there were two back-to-back Nashville fundraising events. This telethon is a great idea. So maybe we're getting into fighting shape now, and we're really going to stand up for ourselves.
Yeah, we need a good Larry Kramer. That's what we need today.
We need our allies. We need to appeal to our allies, because I've said it on this show before, it's not, LGBTQ plus rights aren't pocket push issues. They're not things that are front of mind when our allies go in to vote. So we need to alert them that there are so many things at stake that affect their true friends and I'm sure someone in their family.
I mean, we're sitting here a day after another school shooting, and just want to remind everyone that the thing that children are most at risk for in this country, and the #1 cause of death for children, are guns, not drag queens. Yeah. So every politician that's putting drag performances at the top of their list to protect children is not doing their job to protect our community.
Mm-hmm. John, I think when our allies stand with us, we accomplish much more than just ourselves alone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we move on and we queer up South Florida and Florida. Queer News Tonight premieres Outshine Film Festival announcement show as biggest ever for LGBTQ+. Get ready for a special Outshine Film Festival show premiere that will be exclusively broadcast at 12:01 a.m. Friday morning on Queer News Tonight, or Thursday night, depending on how the clock inside your head works. Electrifying must-see films from emerging and established LGBTQ+ filmmakers will be screened at the 25th Miami edition of Outshine Film Festival. The festival will take place April 20th through 30th. In-person screenings will be held at the Silver Spot Cinema in downtown Miami. The festival also features a lineup of panel discussions, 3 short programs, exclusive virtual showings, cocktails and cinema happy hours, and not to be missed parties at various venues in Miami. The Miami Gay and Lesbian Film Festival started in 1998. The Fort Lauderdale Gay and Lesbian Film Festival a decade later in 2008. Both were brought under the same umbrella, Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival, underscoring our broad appeal and dynamic multicultural location. Critically and internationally acclaimed, it serves as a platform for numerous premieres and is the largest LGBTQ+ cultural arts event in South Florida. The Fort Lauderdale edition of Outshine will be held this October from the 19th through the 29th. And I'm just so excited for this. I always look forward to it. I like the Fort Lauderdale one more because it's like 5 minutes from my house and I don't have to deal with traffic. No offense, but it is. It's a great time. It's a great opportunity to showcase so much that's out there that isn't going to get shown on screens at Regal or AMC that aren't going to get a lot of showings, right? So what can we expect?
And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that a majority of these films never make it to the light of day. The only place that you can see them is at the Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival. And that imaginary line in the sand, John, you can drive to Miami. Your car will make it. The traffic might conk your car up, but you will make it to Miami. We've got about 80+ films, and it's going to be incredible. And Al, dinner this year. Yeah. Dinner on opening night at your seat.
We're filming this special that Queer News Tonight is going to do. We're going to do a 90-minute special on Outshine, announcing the program, their big parties, the film titles, and the theater again is
the Silver Spot Cinema.
Silver Spot. Have you been to it?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great theater.
Screens are gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a really
see our stories on those big screens.
The opening night is going to be an event, 5 stories of Silver Spot. And all of the decked out high density projection, sound, full reclining seats, restaurant, bar, food, and the opening party of the Outshine Film Festival is dinner at your seat.
To say nothing of a great movie.
And there's this thing called movies. So it's really Outshine is taking it to a whole new level, and so many interesting films and themes, and it propels the trans community, it propels the Latino community, it propels women, it propels people of color. I'm excited to say in April we have more than 20 integrations for Outshine from Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out. Faye Watt has 2 interesting interviews coming. Queer News Tonight anchor Dino Mascara, who's one of the film program coordinators for Outshine, will be getting in bed, and they're going to do a story segment only on Spanish language film, and they're going to do the entire interview in Spanish. And I said, wait, no, why not Spanish? And I am told by Dino and Faye that most people in Miami-Dade County don't speak Spanish. They speak Spanglish. So they're going to do it. And then the vice chair for Mark is a lesbian, and she's going to get in bed with Faye, and we'll just stop there. Just leave it.
I wouldn't get in bed with Faye. Tickets go on sale March 30th, and you can pick up your tickets and see the program at outshinefilm.com.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yes. And now, a look at what's in this.
And wait, I'm sorry, I got to say one other thing about Outshine. John, he makes fun about how far away he's going to go. And he's going to go because he just got his passport and he wants to have his passport. Mm-hmm. So you'll be there.
And I'm wearing my Speedo.
Yeah, right.
Oh, not to the event, though.
Oh, yeah. And now, a look at what's in this week's issue of South Florida Gay News. This week in South Florida Gay News. This is South Florida Gay News on Queer News Tonight. I'm reporter John Hayden. In this week's issue, we monitor the attacks on LGBTQ plus rights coming from Governor Ron DeSantis and his legislative Republican supermajority, while looking at how last weekend's March in Heels was a bigger success than expected in getting the message across to Tallahassee. Also, we mourn the loss and look back at the lives of two LGBTQ plus icons, gay South Florida author and entertainer David Lettick, who passed away at the age of 93, and Walter W. Cole, who, at 92 years old, was the world's oldest working drag queen. And this weekend is the annual Diversity Honors Gala presented by the Harvey Milk Foundation, honoring people who carry on the martyred LGBTQ plus civil rights leaders' legacy. It's still at the Guitar Hotel, but it's going to have a splashy new vibe. These stories and much more in this week's edition, on stands and always online. For South Florida Gay News on Queer News Tonight, I'm John Hayden.
Next, let's queer up trans rights. Nebraska lawmaker with trans son tells GOP she's done with them in history-making speech.
And if you don't believe me, if you think I'm going to cool down and change my mind, you should believe me. No one in the world holds a grudge like me. And no one in the world cares less about being petty than me. I don't care. I don't like you. You want welcome in my space. You aren't a safe person for my child to be around. Or any child, frankly. Don't believe me? You should. Senator Hughes yesterday was asking all kinds of questions on the microphone, seemingly coming from a place of complete sincerity about how does this care work? Do parents have to consent every time for kids to get gender-affirming care? Questions that had already been answered. And this morning, Senator Frederickson was answering those questions again, and she's sitting under the balcony not listening. So I go over there and I say, he's speaking to you. He's answering the questions that you specifically had that ostensibly were, preventing you from supporting this bill or not. Now she's sitting with Kathleen Kauth, who's probably saying, don't worry, girl, hold strong. We're gonna get those trans kids. Don't worry. Don't listen to Megan. Screw that. Senator Hughes said, well, some people sent me some emails. So I guess some people sent her some emails and she probably definitely read them and took them to heart. So now she knows all the facts about what trans kids go through. One of the most hateful, bigoted, and wrong things that Senator Kathleen Kauth has said during this debate is that trans kids are hurting and sad. She might be right about that, but she's not right about why. The actions of bullies like Senator Kauth is what caused trans kids pain, not the fact that they're trans. Trans kids are normal, but for adults like Kathleen Kauth who harass them, who introduce bills to make their life harder, to make them feel like outsiders when they are not. There's nothing wrong with them. They get good grades, they go to school, they do activities in clubs, they have friends, they date, they have dreams and goals, they get married, they have kids, just like everybody else. Hopefully someday they run for the legislature and they can straighten some people out.
A Nebraska state senator is causing waves in the state legislature after a scathing speech where she told her Republican colleagues that she is done with being polite with them since they're attacking her family, namely her 12-year-old son who is transgender. Senator Megan Hunt, Democrat, said, quote, "My son is trans, and this bill, colleagues, is such an affront to me personally and would violate my rights to parent my child in Nebraska," end quote. She was referring to LB 574, which would ban doctors from providing gender-affirming care to transgender people under the age of 19. The measure includes puberty blockers, meaning that trans youth would have to go through puberty associated with the wrong gender and live with its permanent effects. If this bill passes, the bill is called the Let Them Grow Act and bans certain procedures for transgender youth, but explicitly allows them, if they're performed on intersex youth, to appear more like the sex a doctor assigns to them at birth. Nebraska State Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, Democrat, has been filibustering all bills in Nebraska's unicameral legislature for weeks now, and Hunt has joined her. The legislature meets for 90 days a year, and meaning that if they filibuster until June 9th, then they have killed all legislation for the year. It's very frightening. I heard a lot of the same anecdotes from the legislature session in Tallahassee from friends who attended, and the parents that were there, especially trans parents who were given 30 seconds to testify, 30 seconds. Many of them were not able to testify because they called a vote to, like a closure vote to end the debate. And while the senators on the other side, or the Republican side, I can say that, were some were texting, some were laughing, not paying attention to parents who were testifying and crying. So again, if this is what is designed to help children, this is again gaslighting, that we're trying to help children and we're trying to root out a problem that does not exist.
Well, 30 seconds is longer than Matt Gaetz's sexual encounters. That's another story altogether. I think there's nothing more passionate than when somebody is personally involved, when your family is involved, and you're defending them. And that's what she's doing, and that's what makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I am totally here for her pettiness. I am totally here for her to call out what is happening just off camera to the sides. The people sitting under there texting, laughing, sharing recipes, whatever they were doing. I'm completely here for it because these bills crush kids. They just crush kids. And I would say take away the guns, not their hormones.
Of course, brava, Senator Megan Hunt, for finally speaking up and saying enough is enough. Kudos also to Michaela Cavanaugh.
Yeah, the whole thing is sad. The whole thing is sad. And what is sad to me is that she speaks that way. It's really unbecoming of a senator in Nebraska to speak that way. But what is sad is that she feels that she has been compelled to the edge of her existence because of protection of her own child to have to speak that way. There are no winners in this conversation. There's no right, there is no wrong. We are all losers because of it, and that's what's sad. It seems to me that we have to take a page out of what we're watching in other places in the world. In Georgia, they've brought a stop to the Putin initiative to be more like what Russia did in 2012, and they've been successful. Currently, and we'll continue to watch what's going on in Israel, but over the weekend, the opposition voice of democratic decision-making took to the streets and brought Israel to a complete stop. Malls couldn't operate, planes could not take off or land, and a very sizable percentage of the population of Israel said, you have gone too far in terms of being anti-democratic, and we don't want a Hungarian style or a lesser style of Putin anti-democratic decision-making in Israel. I think we really need a good dose of that. We really have to start to take to the streets. And what that means is we need a good dose of Larry Kramer in the 1990s. ACT UP was a point where we said, look, we can't talk reasonably to these people anymore, so we're going to stop trying to talk to them reasonably. And we're going to have civil protests. I'm not talking about violence, but we're going to have civil protests in words and actions that are commensurate to say we are going to disrupt the normal legislation or legislative process in Nebraska, where you won't get to pass a single law for all of the entire year because we will filibuster through the entire year. In December, I did an interview that has stuck with me for months and months and months with the idea of what happened in AIDS and Dr. Fauci. And I did the interview with Fauci, and Fauci rings in my ear and has for 3 months. Dr. Fauci talked about Larry Kramer and how much they grew to love each other. And that while Kramer was not approaching AIDS in the way that Dr. Fauci was, he in many respects approached it in better ways because he saved, and the LGBTQ community saved millions of lives by being so demanding through ACT UP as through civil disobedience to bring to a conclusion. And Fauci told a story where Kramer told Dr. Fauci that he should chain himself to the fence of George Bush and at the White House, to the steel fence. Chain yourself to the fence and get attention that NIH is not getting what it should do. And Fauci said to Kramer in a confused way, why would I do that? I'm friends with President Bush. I could just call him. And Fauci misunderstands. Kramer's point was, but you're not being heard and you're not being listened to, which is exactly what we just watched. This entire thing is sad. And at the end of the day, if we are going to stop this in so many areas, this for trans, drag queens, our children in schools, in education, in book bans, in the craziness of what we're watching, ACT UP civil disobedience may be on the horizon as our only solution.
We just watched a mama bear protecting your cubs. That's what I took away from that. Next, let's queer up the road to Stonewall. Tampa Pride leaders are worried about parade and festival future with anti-LGBTQ plus laws. A slew of anti-LGBTQ plus bills is moving through the state legislature, including bans on preferred pronouns in schools and gender-affirming care as well. Restrictions on drag performances that could make public events like Pride illegal. Plus, the DeSantis administration is looking to expand the Parental Rights in Education Act, dubbed, quote, "Don't Say Gay," unquote, by critics, which wouldn't require legislative approval. Tampa Pride President Kerry West told Axios that organizers fear this year's event may be the last legal Pride parade for a while, as, quote, "What's going on in the Florida legislature is disturbing," unquote. However, despite the anti-LGBTQ plus political environment, Ybor City was filled with sunshine and rainbows recently as thousands of people gathered for the Tampa Pride Diversity Festival and Parade. Tampa Pride leaders have always considered the celebration family-friendly, ignoring the false rhetoric spread by GOP legislators. This year, the parade featured younger generations of LGBTQ plus activists speaking their truths about struggles within the current political climate. But this fear in the minds of organizers and the LGBTQ plus community of Tampa does not come out of the blue. Tampa Pride has been forced to shut down before. In 2005, former Hillsborough County Commissioner Rhonda Storms led the commission in banning all Pride events. It took 8 years for that ban to be repealed, and the city hosted its first parade in 2015 with now Mayor Jane Castor as the Grand Marshal. Guys, we're going to see it all over. It's going to get worse and worse with governors like DeSantis and a lot of these other GOP-led states. Somewhere, like Al said, civil disobedience. I'm not sure what the answer is, but we, like other communities, need to stand up for our rights. We need to say that we're everybody. And when you come at us, you're coming at everybody.
I think it's, as excited as we all are to come up on Miami Beach Pride, and we have Stonewall Pride coming up in Wilton Manors, and those are really fun events. We have to remember that Pride started as a protest, and we need to get probably back to the roots of what Pride is supposed to be about. So I hope people will come out and support Pride events, participate in the parade, make a statement, which is what that is about, is to show representation, be out in the community, and yes, the party is a great time to have and to celebrate, but it really needs, at this point, is a protest for our community.
Yeah. It's as we headed into Pride season, I started talking with a lot of presidents and people who are part of Pride. Tampa, which was this last weekend, and as we saw, everybody was having, pardon me, a really great time. Tampa moved alcohol out of the streets and into just one venue, so that, because this year the DeSantis administration has been leveraging the bureaucracy to say, okay, we're going to take your liquor license if you host, profane public things, which includes basically anyone in drag. So they worked around it this year. West Palm Beach or Pride did not have its own liquor license. I believe the sales were left up to local restaurants that are along next to the park where the party was. But that may not work again next year. We don't know what's going to come out of session this year. We don't know what's going to happen. So this year was just kind of workarounds, holding our breath, sucking it in and getting around the tight corner. We'll have to see what happens next year, because they're right. I don't think it will be the last one, because I can't imagine them saying, okay, you can't hold a Pride parade in Wilton Manors, and us not taking to the streets without a permit, without the coordination that makes it such a fun event. We could go in and say, no, this is us. We're going to yell. We're going to scream.
So in other words, a Pride Festival may actually turn out to be a protest.
Yeah,
it's theoretical.
Which would be amazing.
To John's point about Tampa Pride, I have a lot of affiliation and a lot of love and respect for Tampa Bay. It's my hometown. I am from Sarasota. First, to John's point, they skirted by. I think that is really, really a good description. They may do to solve the problem of the imminent issue that other locations like the Hyatt Regency saw. So they skated by. But John's comment but we don't know what's going to happen next year, I do. It's going to get worse. There's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. Ron DeSantis' playbook is a smart version of Donald Trump's playbook, and he's going to pass Don't Say Gay for any kind of sexual content for children in schools for K to 3rd. And when every advocate in Florida and the world last year said, what are you talking about? There is no sexual identification for kindergartners to 3rd grade. That was really not at play. And what he was doing was getting the foothold to be able to do whatever was going to be next. And now in new session and the supermajority, it will move to 9th grade. And already the discussions are, perhaps not in this session, but in the next, that they will move it to high school. That's what's going to happen next to Pride parades and Pride events and drag events and anything that has to do with the LGBTQ community. I know what's going to happen next. It's going to get worse. One other thing that I would say about Tampa, you referred to, I just give you a perspective of history. 2015 Rhonda Storms. Rhonda Storms passed a law in the Hillsborough County Commission that would not allow any city services to be associated with Pride. That meant we can't approve city parks. More importantly, there can be no fire or police protection. That killed LGBT. And when she did that, she knew exactly what she was doing. You can't hold an event because you have to have police and fire. So it was very strategic and it was very smart, a la a cursor to Ron DeSantis. Do it smart and you will win, which is what she did. In 2015, we celebrated in Tampa for the return of the Pride Parade in Ybor City. And I will forever be proud of being basically the lead unit, the company that I worked with, of having a 20-foot banner and a bus and hundreds of participants welcoming Tampa Pride back that had an image of the 20-foot banner that was the famous evolution of man. You know how it was a tiny ape and it grew and it grew and it grew to erect male, except the beginning of the evolution of man was Ron DeSantis. Oh, I'm sorry, Rhonda Stewart. And the issue of that celebration of that moment was she was defeated. But in 2015, we didn't know what was on the horizon that was going to be far, far, far worse. I know John's questions, answer. Next year, it's going to get worse.
Next, let's queer up education. Florida's Don't Say Gay is coming to a high school near you. A proposed Florida Board of Education rule could expand restrictions on classroom instruction related to sexual orientation and gender identity. This rule would build on the Parental Rights and Education Law Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed in March 2022. The law bans classroom instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity in kindergarten through 3rd grade. It states that any instruction on those topics cannot occur, quote, in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students by state standards, unquote. A spokesperson for the governor told ABC News' Rachel Scott in a statement, quote, there is no reason for instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity to be part of K through 12 public education, full stop. End quote. Laura McGinnis of the LGBTQ plus advocacy group PFLAG told ABC News that, quote, everyone has a sexual orientation and a gender identity. It looks like this rule would make it impossible to do much instruction at all, end quote. This rule, voted on by the 7-member board, coincides with other legislation being considered in the state legislature. The proposed legislation would also make it a statewide public school policy that it is false to ascribe to a person a pronoun that does not correspond to such person's sex. A hearing on the proposed board policy will be held on April 19th at the Florida State Capitol Complex.
Changes could be coming to the classroom. A proposed rule by the State Department of Education says, in part, state teachers, quote, shall not intentionally provide classroom instruction to students in grades 4 through 12 on sexual orientation or gender identity unless such instruction is either expressly required by state academic standards or as part of a reproductive health course or health lesson, for which a student's parent has the option to have his or her student not attend. Thursday, Education Commissioner Manny Diaz says this rule is being pushed to avoid confusion in the classroom and to provide clarity for teachers.
This rule basically says that we're sticking to the standards, and when you're talking about K through 12 instruction all the way through 12th grade, these standards don't incorporate gender ideology or any of these theories in math, social studies, reading, or anything else. We preserve the health standards, and that makes it clear for teachers what it is, because there were a lot of questions about age appropriate. Well, this clarifies it for everyone.
This proposed change comes as House Bill 1223 is also making its way through the legislature. It expands current restrictions on teaching K to 3rd grade students about sexual orientation and gender identity, and it takes it up to 8th grade. It also bars teachers from providing or asking a student for preferred pronouns. We wanted to know why the Board of Education is pushing for this rule when a bill is already in the works. So we reached out to an administrative education lawyer in Tampa who does not represent the governor nor the Board of Education.
Essentially what the governor's office is trying to do is reach a certain objective. And in doing so, they're trying to create as many paths to that objective as possible, as many roads to reach their destination. And so they are, looking at passing a statute.
Talk about a dog whistle. Did you see that Patton-esque flag behind him? Oh, it'd be too bad if it fell on him. Earlier we talked about action being taken, protests, activism, taken via telethons and benefit concerts. Feels like we may also need telethons and benefit concerts to raise awareness about how just help slow DeSantis's role before it's too late.
We talked earlier about the ACT UP movement of 30 and 40 years ago. Their sign said silence equals death. It is still true, and the Republicans know that, and they embrace that. They encourage it.
DeSantis is brilliant at creating controversy where there is none. He does it better than anyone. He can build a monumental concept out of absolutely no truth. No parent, I'm a grandparent, would want any type of sexual education taught to their kids in kindergarten through third grade. Whether it's gay, whether it's straight, they shouldn't be taught it, nor are they being taught it. But he brilliantly came up with the concept. He brilliantly is expanding on the concept, and he has followers that believe in him. And he's doing it for item after item that affects our community. And somehow we have to figure out how to stop him. Stonewall, we talked about earlier, was the start of Pride. Unfortunately, I think today gay life is so easy for so many young people that they don't feel that same sense of pride or urgency or think it could be taken away from them. Guess what?
Well, I mean, I hope Manny Diaz will be able to find a job, because what DeSantis is also doing is dismantling public education in Florida. So we won't need a public education or a director or whatever his title is, because he's not really helping educate children, because we're both taking funds away from public education through a voucher program that was just passed. So we're creating a two-tier education system. We're going to leave the kids who are left that have no other choice to get a substandard curriculum that's not going to make them competitive in the real world. And we're going to keep parents who are thinking of moving to Florida or companies that want to relocate here, we're going to keep them out of Florida, because they're going to look at this as a model for craziness. So, I mean, as terrible as this is, I really think this is when it starts to, people are really starting to now look at this and say, and they're going to start seeing there's not going to be enough teachers in schools, there's not going to be enough funding in schools. This is going to ruin public education in Florida, which already wasn't that great to begin with.
You know, the proof to that statement is almost without exception, every standard of states in terms of their success level of whatever the area is that you're evaluating and you're looking at. The place that you don't want to be in your ranking numbers is sitting next to Mississippi and Alabama. Almost without exception in every category, Mississippi and Alabama are the worst places in America on almost every single subject. In education, we sit right between Mississippi and Alabama. That's after 4 years, now almost 5 years of his leadership in the state of Florida in education. That's the proof to the point that you just made. We are the same backwards thinking process of educating our students as Mississippi and Alabama, with triple the population, or I'm sorry, double the population of both of those states combined. We are in California or in New York, or should be, but we're not in education. The other thing that's interesting to me is 100 years ago, P.T. Barnum, which I love, John Ringling in Sarasota, I love the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus. P.T. Barnum in The Greatest Showman movie brought Barnum to everyone's attention of the world's greatest flim-flam man. He knew it. He told you, oh, wait, this is all fake. It's not true. It's not to believe. I'm a flim-flam man. And we loved it. 100 years ago, we loved it. 100 years later, we have another P.T. Barnum who is sitting in the governor's mansion in Florida. The difference is we're buying it and he's not telling it. So as a result, we are accepting the misdirections of the flim-flam that Ron DeSantis is doing, and large swaths of our population is believing it, which is what gets us between Mississippi and Alabama in education.
And worse, there's no one to defy him.
And that's right. That's how you get the supermajority. So again, proof of this in terms of his actions. The one thing, this is a total lie. It's unbelievable. I continue to say there's no way the Supreme Court will sustain this. It's impossible. If the Supreme Court sustains this, we're done. It's just as simple as that. We are done. We're exactly what Netanyahu is trying to do in Israel. If that happens, we're done. I don't think it will. I don't think the Supreme Court would do that. But in the challenge there, what they're doing is they're opening the crack in the door to say, well, let's keep it out of our English classes and our math classes, and it can only be in health classes. Excuse me, we've watched you, flim-flam man. That's only to get the ball rolling, because we know where you're going to take it next. It's not possible to do. It's impossible. What he said, running the state's education department, it is impossible. How do you, in a class, not violate this law, by talking about how you prevent HIV and AIDS and STDs. It's impossible. You can't do that without talking about sexual and gender identity. Because, for example, for everyone that is LGBT, how do you talk about HIV prevention not in any other consequence except heterosexual sex?
But that's not being done in kindergarten through third grade.
Or anywhere, and they're going to exaggerate it beyond that. This is a lie. What we just watched him do is lie. We watched P.T. Barnum's assistant, P.T. Barnum, just lie. Okay, we get it. You're a flim-flam man. But unfortunately, we're believing it. Unfortunately. It's just unfortunately.
Well, we move on and we queer up entertainment. Miami Beach Pride roars back with parade, stars, and festival. The Miami Beach Pride Parade returns to Ocean Drive Sunday, April 16. This procession of floats, DJs, and outrageous outfits draws upward of 170,000 people to Miami Beach every year, celebrating everything that's great about Greater Miami and Miami Beach's LGBTQ+ community. This year's theme is Growing Stronger Together, and while attendees are welcome to work on their pride bodies leading up to the event, no gym time is necessary. The parade starts at noon on the 16th at Ocean Drive and 5th Street and goes north to 15th Street. It has no official ending time, but will transition into the Pride Festival at Loomis Park with live music and DJs. Grand marshals are actor Jonathan Bennett, aka Aaron Samuels from Mean Girls, and his husband James Vaughn. The parade itself is reason enough to spend a day in Miami Beach, but if you're looking for something to do after the parade, then do hit up the festival at Loomis Park, which also kicks off at noon and continues well after the parade is finished. Sunday's lineup will include Shangela, Tony Moran, DJ Slater, Dan Slater, Josh Riptide, Todrick Hall, and DJ Alex Ramos, plus loads of jugglers, drag queens, and other top-notch entertainment. This year, that has something new is the Capital One Community Stage, which will showcase local artists and musical talent. And of course, the 16th is the great big party and the parade and everything, but there's like 16 days of events, 14 days of events scheduled. I think it's 16 over 3 weekends. It's going to be really a massive undertaking. Some of the events are VIP, some are open to everyone, which of course I cannot be bothered with, but it's going to be a great time.
Elitist.
Up and down Ocean Drive, and I can't wait.
I can't even believe it's a pride, because without John Hayden doing a story in SFGN every 3 days, how could it possibly be a pride?
Oh, wow.
You can wear your Speedo, too. You can get used to your Speedo wearing, right?
I have to get a new Speedo by then. Otherwise, people are going to be like, oh, look, we've seen that Speedo before.
When did Todrick start going by one name, by the way? Is that a new thing? Yeah.
We honored him at the Outshine
Okay, sorry.
Festival.
So,
So we're doing a film event this year for Pride, the first ever official sanctioned event at the Rooftop Cinema. And that's a really cool event. The Revenge of the Shiny Shrimp is the film. So Outshine's involved in Pride for the first time.
And that's a great film.
That's a great film.
I think this Capital One stage is a really great idea. It's going to bring a lot of local artists and up-and-coming artists. One of the performers is Joey Young, who was one of our performers at Hollywood Pride, who was booked for Miami Beach Pride. So we're really happy to support Joey at the festival this year. And I do want to, again, say, you know, in Miami-Dade County, of course, that fell to becoming a red county. Again, come out, drive from Broward, drive across from the 954 to 305 and support Miami Beach Pride, because we need to have representation and show how much money we give back to the Miami community and economy.
It's a lot of fun. I had the privilege of hosting the first 4 Miami Beach Gay Prides, being the MC. It's so much fun, and it continues to grow, and the crowds grow, and the talent. I'm just an amazing weekend.
Those were night parades. Were they illuminated by torches?
Wow.
And
next, we are
Notice
proud.
how I just stayed quiet.
We are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
I'm Gabe Salazar, Artistic Director of the Gay Men's Chorus of South Florida, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Well, Fox News, Tucker Carlson, and radical conservatives have suggested the LGBTQ plus community has a secret plan, and we can only guess it's for world domination. And we're getting ready to tell you all about it in our segment called The Gay Agenda.
In The Gay Agenda, we queer up entertainment. Madonna announces Nashville concert to protect LGBTQ plus community, trans, and drag queens. Madonna has added a Tennessee date to her upcoming celebration tour, with proceeds from the show benefiting trans rights organizations. The concert will take place on Friday, December 22nd at Nashville's Bridgestone Arena. In a statement addressing recent anti-LGBTQ plus legislation enacted across America, including in Tennessee, Madonna said, quote, "The oppression of the LGBTQ plus community is not only unacceptable and inhumane, it's creating an unsafe environment. It makes America a dangerous place for our most vulnerable citizens, especially trans women of color. Bob, the drag queen, and I will see you from the stage in Nashville, where we will celebrate the beauty that is the queer community," end quote. Along with the Nashville show, Madonna has added 7 other new dates to the celebration tour, including shows in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Palm Springs, and Sacramento, along with a second show in Phoenix and a third show in San Francisco and Las Vegas. Tickets for the newly announced dates go on sale April 1st via Ticketmaster, with a Live Nation pre-sale occurring one day earlier on March 31st.
In The Gay Agenda, we queer up South Florida and Florida. Here's what's wrong with Sarasota. From school board to ban naked statue of Michelangelo's David. This week, a principal at a Tallahassee charter school was forced to resign after a handful of parents complained that their 6th grade children were shown a photograph of Michelangelo's David, who was famously nude, without the parents being notified about the lesson beforehand. Post that, homophobic comments directed by Tom Edwards, a gay Florida school board member, prompted him to walk out of a public comment. Edwards left a Sarasota County school board meeting when a woman suggested he posed a danger to students. Edwards voiced anger at the school board chair, Bridget Ziegler, for not shutting down the comments, especially 2 weeks after another commentator called Edwards an LGBTQ groomer at a separate meeting. The Zieglers have close ties to Governor Ron DeSantis. Christian Ziegler also helped DeSantis craft a list of school board incumbents for the state party to target in 2024, including Edwards. DeSantis' administration has been trying to control and change the academic curriculum of school boards and colleges across the state, making them less inclusive and anti-LGBTQ.
The morning after he walked off the dais over insulting comments made about him during a school board meeting, Tom Edwards was here filing for re-election. He says he will be able to beat back efforts by the governor's political followers to drive him permanently from the school board. 2 weeks ago, it was this.
Mr. Edwards appears to be a lawbreaker and an LGBTQ groomer.
This week, it was this.
What Tom stands for and what Tom wants to do to our children in this school district isn't what a majority of what... Stop.
And Tom Edwards had had enough.
I'm not going to sit here and allow...
We're going to recess.
Wednesday morning, he filed paperwork to run for re-election.
I have absolutely no doubt that this is a fight that I will win.
He said the rhetoric is hurting students in the Sarasota school district who may be gay or lesbian.
They're accusing me of hurting children when in fact they're hurting children. Their ugly rhetoric is telling all children that their gay and lesbian friends are groomers and pedophiles.
A political fight that will be watched across the state is brewing, as Edwards had already been on a list of school board members targeted by the governor's political team over a so-called woke agenda. Board Chair Bridget Ziegler, who was a strong DeSantis ally, said Wednesday the rhetoric against Edwards was unacceptable, but did not think it was her place to formally stop it.
Calling people names that are intended to be offensive, like racist, bigot, groomer, etc.,
should be off the table.
She insisted his walkout was planned.
I know my colleague is absolutely utilizing it now for exploitation, and it's not genuine in any way, shape, or form.
Though no one has yet filed to run against Edwards, he will likely face a DeSantis political operation that has strengthened in Sarasota, a county DeSantis won by 22 points in 2022 versus 9 in 2018. The election isn't until August of 2024, which means that Sarasota parents, students, and educators are in for a long political fight. In Sarasota County, Evan Axelbank, Fox 13 News.
In the gay agenda, we queer up the USA View. Trans man is identified as Nashville school shooter.
Nashville police keep identify the shooter as 28-year-old Audrey Hale, who police say identifies as transgender. That news has already prompted some attacks against the trans community. KPRC2's Bryce Newberry picks up our coverage from here.
Demonstrators at the Texas state capitol Monday fighting against anti-trans bills being considered by state lawmakers as news broke that the Nashville school shooter identifies as transgender.
It doesn't excuse anything that happened. I am concerned about how opposition and people who are anti-trans will try to spin this.
Concern about tweets like this from GOP Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, writing, "How much hormones like testosterone and medications for mental illness was the transgender Nashville school shooter taking? Everyone can stop blaming guns now."
The comparison of they did it because they're trans is very unfair to trans people.
Andrea Segovia from the Transgender Education Network of Texas joined Monday's battle at the Capitol, fighting House Bill 1686, which would block doctors from providing gender transition health care treatment to children. Now, with another reason for the Texas trans community to be in the spotlight and at least 2 months remaining of the legislative session, advocates worry the attacks aren't over.
You can't say that because one person did something that's a characteristic or reason to be cruel to trans people.
And tonight, while facts about the Nashville shooting are still surfacing, the Human Rights Campaign says trans people are much more likely to be victims of violence rather than perpetrators. Writing in a statement, regardless of the reason for this shooting, the use of violence is reprehensible, and we renew our call for common sense gun safety legislation. In the newsroom tonight, I'm Bryce Newberry, KPRC 2 News.
Not what we needed. Nashville police have identified a trans person as the shooter behind America's latest school shooting attack that killed 3 children and 3 adults at a Nashville-based educational institution. As per reports, the shooter left behind a map and a manifesto relating to the attack. The items were revealed upon a search of the suspect's house. The local police chief, John Drake, said that the manifesto, quote, indicates that there was going to be shootings at multiple locations and the school was one of them, unquote. As per Reuters, the map had detailed drawings of the private Christian school's entry points. Investigators are examining the maps, the manifesto, and other writings the police discovered at the 28-year-old school's house, shooter's house. According to social media, the shooter had recently started using he, him pronouns and the name Hayden instead of his birth name.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, then share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV? And I'm afraid the Android thing is coming to get me. Can we just make it go away?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That's the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Jeff Oliverio, John Hayden, Mark Gilbert, and Gregg Shapiro, We will see you daily at 8 p.m. But before we end our broadcast, we have one final story.
Next, let's queer up the big interview. Nicole Murray Ramirez, one of America's greatest LGBTQ plus activist, wins Harvey Milk Medal at Diversity Honors. Diversity Honors, the globally renowned celebration that benefits Harvey Milk Foundation and the Pride Center at Equality Park, exclusively hosted by Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino Hollywood, will take center stage again on Saturday, April 1st, to acknowledge those who are transforming lives by living authentically and advancing inclusiveness. This year, the foundation will honor Commissioner Nicole Murray Ramirez with the prestigious Harvey Milk Medal, among other honorees of Diversity Honors. Nicole Murray Ramirez is an LGBT activist and frequent San Diego City Committee appointee known as Empress Nicole the Great, Queen Mother of the Americas, within the imperial court system of which she is the titular leader. Apart from the prestigious Harvey Milk Medal, Commissioner Ramirez's nearly 45 years of social justice and charity work have been recognized by countless awards and honors within the countries of Mexico, Canada, and the United States.
Well, tonight at Queer News Tonight, we have a very special interview. A lot of LGBTQ history you're getting ready to hear about as we prepare for the Harvey Milk Foundation and Pride Center at Equality Park for the amazing Diversity Honors that is happening April 1st at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino Hotel in Hollywood. And our guest tonight in Queer News Tonight is Commissioner Nicole M. Ramirez. Nicole, welcome this evening to Queer News Tonight.
Thank you.
Great
to be here.
We are excited to talk to you because rarely do I get verklempt over LGBT history, and I am in being able to talk to you because you have been at sentinel moments of LGBT civil rights in America and for the world, and we're getting ready to explore it. So thank you very much for being with us here at Queer News Tonight. So let me begin with the court system. So many people might not be familiar. You are Queen Mother of the international court system. More than 70 chapters around the country. For those that follow RuPaul, lots of people know me in connection with RuPaul's Drag Race. Talk about the court system. And Queen Mother sounds like an impressive title. I happen to know it is. But tell us about...
it's an aging title.
Well, Queen Elizabeth got a lot of respect from aging too. So
yeah, but you got to remember, she wasn't the Queen Mother. Her mother was the Queen Mother. She was. I could identify with her. Anyway, the International Imperial Court System started with its first chapter in San Francisco, and what's interesting, its founder was Jose Julio Sierra, and he was a World War II veteran, and also in 1961 became the first candidate to run for public office. Now, if you think about it, he lived through as I have, the McCarthy era, the Nita Bryant era, and I always say he was like Johnny Appleseed. From a seed he planted in San Francisco, it grew into a royal oak tree, and with branches in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, as you said. Yeah. And now we have 70 chapters.
Yeah, and help our viewers understand your title as Queen Mother. What is your official role? Do you open grocery stores and?
Actually, no. I do that as the honorary mayor of. I cut ribbons there.
Cut ribbons, right?
With that, I call it the civic and the royal title, right. But sometimes they collide. The best way to say or describe the court system is we're the LGBTQ Shriners or Alps of the Americas, except we don't run little hats a thing. We have crowns and gowns, and we have no staff, no headquarters, and all we do is raise money and for other organizations.
Exactly.
And we've been doing that since the 1960s and have been through it all. And there's also, since our founder was the first openly gay candidate to run for public office in 1961, we also are involved in activism. We were one of the first in California to raise money. Jack Campbell, who was the treasurer during the Anita Bryant campaign, we raised, I think it was about $4,000 just passing the hat in a coronation ball. Yeah. And Jack, I believe, wrote in his book that we were one of the first to send money from California to fight Anita Bryant.
And a little known fact, the court system in that hat pass helped purchase the pie that got pushed in her face here in Miami. So we're very, very happy about that. Nicole is a Latino LGBTQ plus activist for over 50 years. And listen to some of the things that Nicole has been involved in, and you'll understand why coming to the Seminole Hard Rock for the designation at Diversity Honors. Former state chair of Equality California. I almost said Equality Florida. I'm so used to saying that, but Equality California has advised and served with dozens of mayors in California from Los Angeles to San Diego. Has served on the boards at the Gay Rights National Lobby, at the Human Rights Campaign, the HRC, the National LGBT Task Force. We broadcast the National Dinner at Miami Beach Convention Center. He is head of one of the oldest LGBT organizations in the United States, as I said, the Imperial Court, founded in 1965 with 70 chapters. The emphasis of your advocacy in LGBT for 50 years, you've watched the process of 1969 at Stonewall and the Reagan years over AIDS and his silence, and then the AIDS movement and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then to Obama and how his understanding evolved to gay marriage, to Donald Trump, to even what we're seeing today at DeSantis. Tell us a little bit about your advocacy and what you've seen over your last 50 years for LGBTQ.
Well, I've always said that God's blessed me to be alive and to witness and be part of the growth and the visibility of the two communities that I love, and that's the Latino and the LGBTQ community. I come up from a time before Stonewall. I come from a time when, can you imagine progressive California? It wasn't until 1976 that homosexuality was legal. You could be sent to a mental hospital, and I knew many people who were, at a stroke of a pen, a signature of your parents or a judge, subjected to lobotomies and electric shock treatment. So coming from those times and the bar raids, because what was happening at Stonewall was happening across the country, the discrimination. So I grew up also not only being called a fag and a queer, but also a wetback and a spick. So to see the two communities actually in California and Texas and all over growing more and more, the Latino community and the LGBT, I feel really blessed to do that. My outlooks, my parents, my father was very involved in Latino civil rights organization and a leader in the American GI Forum. That's why I've always been patriotic, because my brother and father served in it. I was rejected, of course. I think I was kind of flaming when I came in. But I think it's important that our community realize that we've been in the fabric of this America since the beginning. I mean, the two-spirited of the American Native the Native American culture and the two-spirited. I mean, when the explorers went back to Europe, they told their monarchs about men who were dressing as women and women who were dressing as men. And also that, no one even heard, a lot of times when I speak at colleges or even high schools, I bring up Baron von Steuben, who was the Revolutionary War, unbelievable. I hope your listeners look him up, the Baron. He was a Valley Forge. He was openly gay and brought two of his lovers to Village 4. He was the #1 in Europe that could get an army together. And obviously, the Revolutionary War, they're mostly farmers, are American soldiers, and he whipped them into thing. In fact, this is what's great. We lay wreaths at his every year in front of his statue, and it's the Barron statue is only one of 5 statues at Lafayette Park, right across the White House. So we especially enjoyed putting our rainbow wreaths and coloring when Trump was in the White House.
Yeah. You know, I want to mention in terms of your reference on the Two-Spirit, and Nicole is talking about Native Americans in a philosophy of how they intersect a homosexual community and broadly how that's defined. Interesting in that the Hard Rock chain is owned and all the entire chain by the Seminole tribe of Florida and the Miccosukee.
You know, one of the biggest allies of our community has been what the Native American, the tribe is doing in Florida. They're doing across the country. I mean, they are definitely co-sponsoring and sponsoring so many LGBTQ events, not only civil rights wise, but charity. And they are truly a wonderful people.
Yeah, exciting as a result to have diversity honors at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel here in Hollywood. Nicole, I want to come back to your reference of 50 years of advocacy, a task force, an HRC, and the Imperial Court, and all of the political work that you've done at Equality California and advising mayoral campaigns and those in office from LA to San Diego. You talk about the intersection of the slurs that you experienced as Latino and the slurs that you receive in the early days and not so early days for LGBT. Was one worse than the other? Did one attack or the other be more
well, you know,
harmful?
Pretty soon you got used to them, sad to say. But in my mind, I was going to make sure that they knew the works and my activism of this queer and this wetback, because the discrimination that LGBT people have faced has also been faced and continues to be faced, as we know, by our African American community. Look at the Asian Pacific Islander community with what's happened to them and the focus on hate crimes on them, and the Jewish community. I believe like Harvey Milk did, and that is in coalition building and building bridges, because the enemies of the LGBTQ community are basically the enemies of the Jewish community, the Latino, the African American community. So my hope and my knowledge is we could win this battle, because a war has been declared on our community. Yeah. And it reminds me of the Anita Bryant days. And the way we can win this war is to bridge these bridges, reach out to these other organizations, and know that a hate crime, not only say it, but live it, that a hate crime against any of us is a hate crime against all of us.
So you've just outlined very to the point the intersections of faith attack, race attack, gender attack, sexual orientation attack, not only black, but brown, Asian, people of color attack. Are you hopeful that all of these intersectional communities will join forces to stand up and fight where these attacks come from?
Let me tell you, I remember during AIDS, I would wonder, because so many of our leaders were dying, I thought, who is going to carry that torch? And to tell you honestly, my greatest joys is speaking and going to youth groups and university. I believe it will be the next generation that will lead us to that mountaintop of equality. I believe that if you look at even MTV, I mean, they have so many gay characters. And there was a time, as you know, we would never see ourselves on TV. It's this new generation. I always say that definitely Kennedy's thing about the torch has been passed on to a new generation. And indeed, in the LGBTQ community, a torch has been passed on. And that torch has been grabbed by some activists that are so out and proud. I mean, I remember my generation, we would never think of holding hands or putting our hair in rainbow. You know, we were criticized for having Beatle haircuts. But I have great faith. I do not believe I and others of my Stonewall generation will live to see them reach that mountaintop, but I believe they will take us there.
Yeah, very reminiscent of MLK's words for his community. I want to come back to the Latino issue that you talk about. As we were preparing in talking about diversity honors and the incredible award that you're getting ready to receive, we see some of the pictures of Cesar Chavez, and you were presented with the Social Justice Award presented by his widow, Helen. Tell us a little bit about what, we have some pictures of that, what your reaction in terms of the representation for the Latino community and from the Latino community, what that was for you.
Well, you know, I've had the honor of working with Senor Chavez. And in fact, I talked him into coming to the National March on Washington in 1987, where he spoke. And he's such a humble man. I've had the honor of meeting like Coretta Scott-Skeen and the warmth and the authenticness and of these two people is just, it was a highlight of my life to meet and work with Senor Chavez. But Senor Chavez, people don't realize a Latino was the first gay was the first civil rights activist that supported homosexual civil rights in the 1970s. He was the first civil rights activist to do so. And why? Because of the coalition building of Harvey Milk, supporting the Great Boycott and so forth. And now we have Stuart Milk serving with, his co-founder on the equality board. So it's that coalition building that is so important. And that Harvey Milk, I had the honor of working with. His sense of humor always got me, but in the 1970s against the Brig initiatives of Anita Bryant in California. And Harvey was just unbelievable, was definitely a visionary because he supported in office, not only working families, seniors, but Latinos and the African American, the Black Civil Rights Movement. And he got criticized for that because LGBT leaders at that time said, oh, you should just focus on gay rights and that should be your priority. Well, his priority was human rights and the rights of all people. And so that's what attracted me to him and to work with him as a Latino, because when he embraced the Great Boycott, to me, he was embracing my community and my people.
You know, Nicole, it's such a fabulous opportunity for me to ask. You're intersecting over the last 50 years with a great Latino civil rights activist and a great LGBTQ civil rights activists, and then your participation with them. If they were alive today and they were watching what we are watching in America today, especially here in Florida, with this potential two that are going to vie for 2024, what would they say about what they're watching here in America today?
You know, I believe that their reaction would be the same as I've said many times. I believe if Jesus came down right now and saw and heard what people are saying in his name, he would weep. And I think that Senor Chavez and Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther, for all their sacrifice, their lives to the equality of all people, would come down. They would weep also. But I think they would also be proud because they would know that we're not just going to sit back, that we're going to fight back, and that we realize that voting and getting involved in politics is the answer.
Yeah.
And also coming out. Harvey always said, come out, come out. Well, of course, because what's changed America and the Gallup poll of thing is people saying, oh, my coworker's gay, my neighbor's gay, my minister is gay,
my uncle is gay.
Exactly. So these are the things of coming out and getting involved in the political process and voting. As a Latino, I wish all the Latinos would vote in California and Arizona, New Mexico, and so forth, because then actually we would have the state legislature majority and we'd have Latino governors. But sadly, we're improving. A lot of people just don't vote.
Nicole, I want to talk about one of the activist lines that so many in Florida are talking about today, and really all over the country. Tennessee has thrown the gauntlet down and declaring the culture war, and that's drag queens. You were one of the nation's first non-binary activists and drag queens to be appointed to city and state public office, and since that time, we have watched, especially over the course of the last year, here in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has demonized drag queens as groomers and has attacked businesses like the Disney Company and Hyatt Regency in terms of their liquor license. And Tennessee has declared a statewide ban on public performance of drag queens. What are your thoughts? Your days of your position in the royal court, what do you think about what we're watching about drag queens?
Well, like I said, I believe first we had, and I call this the wars, the war of Joe McCarthy, and then it was Anita Bryant declaring the war. Obviously, we had AIDS, and we've always seemed to have hate. But this time, this is the third, I call it the third war. It is because they're trying to erase our transgender community. The drag is unbelievable. If Santos would only realize that in the military, in World War I and World War II, there were drag shows. There were no women allowed on that stage. The WACs actually had, are you ready for this, workshops for soldiers how to put their makeup on and be impersonators and drag queens. And guess who attended one and raved about it? President Roosevelt. So we have a long history of culture, not only Shakespeare and so forth, when they wouldn't let women on the stage. It was female impersonators of drag queens. And what is lost in our community is, I think you realize that in the 60s, what were the fundraisers? There was no task force. There was no victory fund or HRC. There were bars and drag shows, because we all know that the African community in the churches were their safe place in their Black civil rights movement. And our movement in the early years, the bars were our safe place. And the fundraising that was happening was drag queens. And our court system, being started in the 1960s, was a great part of it. Even if you look in the AIDS crisis, and what is lost are three things: the drag involvement and fundraising, the leather community's involvement, and women. I mean, thank God that women took the place, sadly, of many men who are passing in our leadership. I remember, I think it was David Mixner called a war conference in the Senate retreat in Washington, D.C. that I attended. And I'll never forget when someone at the end of this conference, it was a conference of national leaders, and it was on the AIDS crisis, and said, who in this room has AIDS? And I'll never forget, I think it was more than half of the men stood up. I knew we were in trouble then. And thank God that the women stepped forward and are still being the rightful place of leadership in our community.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. You talk about the importance of our gay bars. The one in the southern half of Manhattan in New York in 1969 basically becomes sacred ground for us, and that is Stonewall. Interesting, Nicole, you were the founder of the National LGBTQ Wall of Honor at the Stonewall Inn in New York City. So you know what you're talking about in terms of the holy ground of civil rights in America.
My most famous saying is this, and it's been quoted quite a bit, and is that a community, indeed a movement that doesn't know where it came from and doesn't know whose shoulders it stands on, really doesn't know where it's going. And I strongly believe that. We seem to forget, you're right, we dedicated it at the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. And we put in 50 names, and we should not forget these people. When that mountaintop is reached by this generation of equality, they should not forget who struggled and who pushed them up that mountaintop. Yeah. And it seems that a lot of times we forget this. We forget the contributions of not only the drag community, the transgender of the community, the women's community, and the people of color's community. Our history is so important because it needs to be taught, and there needs to be a little pride in it. Every day I thank God I'm alive because I've lost so many friends and so many colleagues. I just lost Darcel in Portland. 92 years. Wonder if she owned Darcel's a show bar, and she wasn't only just a drag queen. She had meetings with the mayor, worked on Harvey Milk Street and Portland to get that done. And so, sometimes when you look at drag queens and you look at me, I'm a perfect example. We're more than just a wig and dressing up. There's a lot to us. Drag queens have been activists in their hearts for decades because they had to be. Like I said, I'm glad that there's the Victory Fund and all, because that is so important. That we have these organizations in Washington. The Harvey Milk Foundation. I mean, Stuart Milk. People don't realize when he goes to Europe and they invite all these leaders of ours, I won't mention them, and they won't go because of death threats. Stuart's there, right there. I think, people say, oh, Stuart Milk is walking the footsteps of his uncle. No. He has made his own footsteps, and his journey is one that is worldwide. I'm sure that Harvey is just beaming at every success Stuart does.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the Harvey Milk Foundation, the reason why I'm having the privilege to talk to Nicole today is Diversity Honors. And Diversity Honors on April 1st is going to be at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino and Hotel in Hollywood. It is a fundraising event for one of the top LGBT community centers in America, Pride Center at Equality Park here in Wilson Manors, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boys Town, Equality Park. They're in the same genre of importance in America. Nicole, I'm curious. So you're coming to Fort Lauderdale, and you'll be in our community. We always argue and we make fun in a tongue-in-cheek way. We here in South Florida are the gayest place on planet Earth. It's not Los Angeles. It's not San Diego. It's not San Francisco. It's South Florida, and we'll argue with it with you when you come down. And,
I think Palm Springs would also be arguing with us.
They probably would argue with us too. But so you're going to come to Fort Lauderdale, and you're being presented with the Harvey Milk, very prestigious Harvey Milk Medal. Now, this has been kind of an LGBT civil rights history lesson in getting to talk to you today. When you heard that you were going to be presented by the Harvey Milk Foundation for the Harvey Milk Medal, what was your reaction to that? All of the awards that you've done, all of the things that you've done, what was your reaction to it?
Well, I think of the court system because, as you probably know, it was the imperial courts that led the campaign that resulted in the U.S. Harvey Milk postage stamp that was unveiled at the White House. And many of us of the court people were there. And also then, as soon as Don't Ask, Don't Tell was lifted, we immediately launched a letter writing campaign to get a vessel named after. And as you know, that happened too. This was in its old fashioned. I encourage people, instead of emails, and write letters. You write a letter to whatever cause. It attracts, because people don't do that anymore. And I got our courts to write letters and get their friends to write letters and stuff. We had the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, because they knew the empress there, write a letter and so forth. So to get this award, I believe it's not only acknowledgement of me, and I cherish the relationship that Harvey Milk and I had as activists, but it's, I always say, as Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village. And any of my accomplishments have been because people believed in it. When I said, hey, let's start writing letters to get a stamp, and how did that happen? Because I worked on to get a stamp for Senor Chavez. So I said, wait, don't we have one too? And we are continuing our campaign to get one for Bay and Rustin, and also Marsha P. Washington, Sylvia Rivera, and Jose. Queen Ann Ervichet of the task force, who recently died, passed a couple of years ago. So, because here's my belief. We are been in the fabric of America, so why shouldn't we have schools named after our heroes, have streets named after them, and have parks named after them? Because as a Latino, I can look and see a Chavez Park, I can look and see this and that. Well, I want to see the heroes of our communities across this nation have their own streets and parks. I'm very proud that San Diego was the first city to dedicate a street in honor of Harvey Milk. The second one, the second one was Salt Lake City, and that great Mayor Jackie. And then the third one was Portland. The fourth one was Paris. And the fifth one was in Miami, I believe, in Florida.
Miami. Right, exactly. Nicole, what a great pleasure to meet and talk to you. I'm a great student of our LGBTQ community and constantly focus on learning new things. Last question for you. You're going to be here in Fort Lauderdale at that magnificent Seminole Hard Rock Hotel, and you're going to be presented for 50 years of your advocacy in so many of our institutional iconic civil rights moments and organizations. You're going to be presented the Harvey Milk Medal. You receive the medal and you talk. The next day, do you say, I'm done, okay, that's it, I've accomplished it? What happens on the next day?
Well, I have all kinds of projects going on. As you said, the National Wall of Honor of LGBT Honor at the historic stone, and the next, we put 5 people a year, and it will be on June 22nd will be the National Wall Honors and honorees. And then I'm also working, it's called Operation Drag Defense, and it's a fund. We're about to issue 10,000 to different, we're going to hopefully work with Equality. I talked to them yesterday, the Equality Federation, because we have court chapters in these cities, in Montana and Idaho and Kentucky and so forth. So we're going to do what we do best, and that's raise money. I believe that when God calls me, I'll probably have a phone here and a phone here, and keep, because I think it's important that we do what God's given us a gift. I think God gave me the gift of being an activist, and I will use it to the fullest.
Yeah, and those are powerful words. Diversity Honors, December 1st at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood. Benefit for the Pride Center at Equality Park. It's been such a pleasure. What a history lesson of the LGBT community and the history of more than 50 years that Nicole has touched. You want to be at Diversity Honors, if for no other reason, to meet and shake hands with Nicole M. Ramirez. Thank you so much for being with us today, this evening at Queer News Tonight.
Thank you. God bless.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire